Welcome to CFRC 101.9 FM's workshop on using CFRC's Studio A. This workshop is presented as a part of the Radiometers project of 2024. Knowing the studio. We'll start by illustrating the difference between a control room and a studio. What is a control room? Think of a control room as similar to one shown in a space station or a high security institution in the movies. The control room is where you analyze, observe, and make adjustments of what you are in control of. At CFRC, the difference between a control room and a studio often gets blurred, as we are usually both the controller and the producer of a source of audio. But even though this is usually the case here, when we use Studio A specifically, the control rooms are for observing, monitoring, and capturing the source audio from the studio. These rooms then go back to having singular purposes in this context. The control room has faders, a computer, recording software, and monitoring capacities so that as a session happens, you can make any immediate adjustments you need to get the audio just right. The control room is what gives you control. We keep all of these capacities separated from Studio A so that the studio can serve just one purpose. So, what is a studio? A studio, or Studio A, is the designation that we use for the space that's job is to strictly produce the sounds we want to capture. It is designed in a way so that even if the producer in a control room has to have a chat, listen over the monitor speakers, or get up for a moment, it will not interrupt the flow of the sounds made in the studio. We even have it set up so that if there are certain messages we need to get across to whoever is in the studio, we can do it without having to enter their space. Differentiating these two spaces is key when dealing with larger groups, as there is a lot for the person in control of the board to manage and to possibly troubleshoot. This is a great way to compartmentalize the possible stresses of the production side of audio recording, leaving your guests to have as natural as possible of an experience in their own private area. The studio is about 9 feet by 9 feet, and we can fit up to roughly 9 band members and their instruments into the room, though it is certainly not recommended. Chance personally has fit the Manitoba jazz band Apollo Suns into the room, which included horns, synth, bass, guitar, and drums. It was hectic, difficult, and very stressful. Again, certainly not recommended, but we made it work. Equipment. In Studio A, PreSonus 8124C is used as a microphone preamp and is located on the wall looking in to CR1. This audio interface can add volume to very low sound sources, and later we will discuss what volumes are necessary for use in most cases. This location was chosen based on internet infrastructure. The cable snake box is on the wall looking into CR3, though this is not the exact one we have. This location was chosen based on the power outlets nearby and its ease of use for a band setting up or a group of podcasters who wish to face mainly towards CR1. This box extends the inputs and outputs found on the PreSonus 8124C to the other side of the room. DI boxes. DI boxes are magic. They convert an unbalanced high impedance signal into a balanced low impedance signal. This allows for a signal that would normally need lots of amplification from something like a guitar amplifier to be better suited for our use case of a microphone preamp. These boxes don't need to be used very often, but they are the most important in an instance of recording a bass before it hits the bass amplifier, while still allowing the bass player to use their own amplifier for their own monitoring purposes. It splits the signal with an isolated transformer, essentially producing two signals, one for direct input recording and the other for an amplifier. These boxes have many toggles, including multiple pads, to reduce the gain in case of clipping, as well as a ground lift that should be used if a hum is present in the recording. These need to be powered to be able to be used, so either a 9-volt battery must be present or the phantom power switch on the 8124C must be set to on. Microphones. We will focus on two kinds of microphones today, the Behringer SL84C and the Ashton Stealth. The SL84C. This microphone is best to use in almost any scenario when it comes to recording in Studio A. Instruments, people, it has it all and is seriously versatile. It is an inexpensive microphone that mimics the legendary Shure SM58. For more information, you can refer back to our video on microphone etiquette. Some basic microphone etiquette includes maintaining a consistent distance of about 2 inches. Be sure to angle the microphone towards the audio source. If the microphone is directly pointed at a mouth, it can add unwanted plosives. Remember that angling away from where the air exits your mouth is key to not only capturing the voice, but not your breathing or mouth sounds. The best practice when recording an instrument with the SL84C is to get the capsule as close as you can to the sound source without it touching the sound source. Touching the source will cause unwanted vibrations to be picked up in the recording. The Ashton Stealth. The Ashton Stealth is a more expensive microphone, but that does not always mean better. Its capsule's pickup patterns can be adjusted for different use cases, such as deeper or higher vocal frequencies, guitars, or ribbon microphone emulation. All of these can be very useful for someone who is comfortable with making tweaks to their microphones to get the exact sound they are hoping for. However, we would suggest that in most use cases, you will find that the sensitivity is much greater on these mics, and it tends to cause more headaches for folks who wish to record someone quickly and accurately. Microphone positioning and sound source placement. Stage plots. Stage plots come in many shapes, sizes, and legibility. However, their purpose is all the same, to tell you, as the host or producer, which band members will be there and what their input list is. An input list tells you what you can expect as sound sources and how they expect to send it to you. It gives you an idea of what is most important, and that is how to negotiate what is and is not feasible for your recording setup. We highly recommend that you ask bands, large or small, for their stage plots long before they arrive. It can help prevent a lot of headache and let you know what equipment the band expects to bring and what they expect you to provide. Positioning the microphone correctly is also crucial to a good recording or broadcast. In most scenarios, it is recommended to keep sound sources approximately 3 feet away from each other, and angled in such a way that neither the capsule or the cable are pointed directly at another sound source. Microphone bleed. Microphone bleed is when a microphone picks up the audio from an unintended source that already has a microphone dedicated to it. This is an incredibly likely thing to happen with bands being as loud as they are, but even with podcasts, it can lead to a mess to be able to mix around the audio sources without them being doubled. But let's look at some of the benefits of microphone bleed. Microphone bleed lets listeners know that there is a room where the recording was done. We call this live off the floor recording, and it is not how a lot of studios work when producing things like voiceovers or a band album. However, if you have ever heard the phrase radio session from an album you are listening to, the odds are that it was a live, off-the-floor recording, where the musicians performed in real time instead of in separate, isolated instances. This has its charms. It creates a bit of depth in the recording, and it reminds folks that what we do is live and in person, which is not always going to be perfect. The previous point, however, does not excuse bad practices when it comes to recording. We still want this to sound as good as possible. Distance between sources is key, acting as if there is a bubble around each source that you do not want to overlap with another bubble. 3 feet is again the reasonable distance when it comes to this idea. Another good practice is to imagine a straight, invisible line that runs along the microphone from the capsule to its base. Try not to let this line point directly at another sound source. And yes, microphones can pick up audio from their base. Recording setup and signal flow. Alright, now we're on to the best part, getting ready to hit record. Our line inputs, of which we have a total of 8, are all XLR inputs. So what this means is that no matter the scenario, we need our inputs to become XLR compatible. Earlier, we spoke of DI boxes. DI boxes are what you would use to convert almost any signal that isn't in this cable format to be compatible with our setup. Our headphone outputs are only TRS compatible. The important distinction is the number of rings. TRS has 2 rings creating 3 segments: tip, ring, and sleeve. Set the microphone preamp dial for each line to 2 o'clock. This should give you enough volume that you have a strong enough signal and enough headroom so that you are unlikely to clip. That is kind of the name of the game. How loud can we get without causing any distortion? The next step is hopping onto the board and making sure our inputs register. The whole leftmost side of the board has inputs 1 to 8 of Studio A as an option for you to select. All you have to do is spin that knob on the top of the mixer until you select the input that you want. There aren't many options, so what you are looking for should be relatively simple to find. You scroll that dial until you see your input and you are good to go. Reaper is our friend, and in Reaper there is already an option to load in a template for Studio A recording. CR1 already has this template set up and ready to go for folks looking to record in Studio A. Hit record, super easy, you already know the rest. Want to go live? For this, you're going to need a friend. Set up everything in the mixer in CR1, then head to CR2, our main broadcast control room, and turn up the fader labeled CR1.